Karen. Welcome to Book Talk. Today we're going to talk about Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I love this book so much. It was my first Colleen Hoover book that I ever read, and it was very, very good. Ms. Christine Riccio got me into this. Ms. Natasha Polis got me into this book because they hauled it and they talked about it. From what I saw in their videos, I had to read this book. I'm not into contemporary or love, anything like that. Maybe kind of like Nicholas Sparks books, but this was a very good book, and it was, like I said, my first book by Colleen Hoover, and I could not get enough of it. Guys, this book was amazing, like amazing. I swear to God, I read 2 chapters a night, and it made me so upset when I finished the book because I was so upset, and I went to work and I was telling my coworker about it, and I was saying that I'm so upset because I finished the book and I wanted more, even though we had a nice conclusion ending and it wrapped everything up that we thought was going to happen and everything. Okay, I'm going to give you a non-spoiler preview of the book. This story follows Tate Collins, who is a nursing student, and she has a job at the hospital, and she's studying to get her bachelor's degree in college. And she just moved from San Diego, and now she's moving to San Francisco to live with her brother Corbin, who is an airline pilot, and he lives in this big skyrise where the airline owns the skyrise, I believe. And across the hall, she stumbles upon this guy, incredibly sexy, Miles Archer. I think he's Corbin's friend and he's his neighbor. So basically they meet and they have this undeniable attraction that cannot be denied, and they try to stay away from each other, and it just doesn't work out, and they realize why fight it. So basically he doesn't want love because of his tragic past that we don't know about, that we find out throughout the book. And she doesn't have time for love because she's busy doing her studies, and last thing she wants is love. So they come upon this agreement to have a sexual relationship. Basically, it's a no strings attached. They can have sex anytime they want, whenever they want. There's 2 rules. Don't ask about the past, and don't expect the future. That's all I'm going to say in terms of the non-spoiler version. The book is also in 2 POVs. It's in Miles and Tate's POV. And Miles' POV takes place 6 years earlier, and hers takes place in the present. So that's not much of a spoiler, but it's very, very good, guys. I love this book. I'm going to read more Colleen Hoover books because of this, because it is so good. That's the non-spoiler version. Go read this book, pick it up, and then come back and we'll discuss it. So, bye non-spoiler people. Bye! Okay, let's discuss the book. So the book opens up and she's moving in, and we're in Tate's head. It starts with Tate, and she walks into the skyrise. She had drove all the way from San Diego all the way to there, which I assume is a long drive. So she's walking in, she has her comfortable clothes on. The first character we meet is Cap, which I liked him very much. He was a very sweet old man, and he kind of developed a friendship with Tate over the course of the book, and she vented with him when she was feeling upset about Miles, or when she felt down and she needed somebody to talk to. He was there, and he was basically a support system for her, which I liked. And turns out he knew Miles from like beyond. I thought that Miles just lived in the building and he just knew him from living there, but he's from his past. I had no idea reading that. I love the scene when they open up and she's going to Corbin's apartment building. I mean, she's going to his room, and then first scene we see with Miles is he's drunk on the floor. He's leaning against the door and he's drunk, and we don't know why, and he's there, and she has to help him in the room because we didn't know who he was at first. I said, "Ooh, is this some creep?" And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, is this Miles? Is this Miles? Or is this somebody else that is not a main character, but we kind of knew in the back of my mind that it was him? So then she had to help him in the room. She had to call Corbin. Corbin is the protective older brother, so he cares about Tate, and he would do anything to protect her against anybody, which explained why he got all angry at Miles towards the end of the book, because he found out they were sleeping together, and I was shocked by that. I kind of had a theory. I didn't know when he was going to find out or catch on, maybe if he ever was going to catch on. But he started hating Miles towards the end because he asked her if he loved Tate, and he said no, and then he kind of okay, and then Tate's like he's adapting, which I don't think he was, and then we find out he's okay with Miles at the end because, spoiler, they get married, and I guess he turns his whole view around to Miles. So Miles is the neighbor, and he was across the hall, and then he ends up sleeping the night at the apartment with Tate because he spent the night on the couch and she was in her room, and then he just like walks in the next day. I can relate to Tate so much because she's not a morning person and neither am I. So anyway, he's staring at her, and then she just closes the door in his face, and then she just goes back. That sounds like something I would do. I could relate to her in a way because she is a college student, I'm a college student, and I'm working. I saw a lot of myself in her, and I could hardly relate to any book characters that I've read about. Probably the book character that I could relate to the most in terms of being related to them. Miles, we learn, has a tragic past. And then he's in high school when we first meet Rachel, and she walks in, this pretty redhead. She had to show her around. I see Rachel. She walks in and she's new to the school because she's from Arizona. And Miles it was like love at first sight. And he's like, "You're gonna have my babies and everything." And he was a little kind of obsessive. And then he showed her around, they bonded, and then they wanted to start dating, but it turns out it was his dad's girlfriend's daughter, and then they get married, and they end up becoming something. And then Rachel gets pregnant, they have a kid, they have a little boy named Clayton. On the way home from the hospital, they get to a car accident, and the car goes off the bridge, and at first I thought Rachel was going to die, and the baby was going to live, but it turns out that the baby died and Rachel lived, because then I thought to myself, how could the baby live if we never heard about a kid anyway? And I saw how the past kept it going till the end, because it really lasted until like the very last page. That was so tragic. I cried at that part. I felt teary-eyed, and I was reading at like 3 a.m. and I was so sad, and I got really emotional there. That was his past, and then that was 6 years earlier, and then now he meets Tate. And then Thanksgiving, they decide on this arrangement because she has to stitch him up because he had a hand injury. So then that kiss in the bathroom, whew, it was really good. I loved that kiss between them. One of my favorite parts of the book. I loved it so much, and the scenes between them with the kissing and the sex scenes were so passionate and beautiful, beautifully written. It was like I was watching a movie in my head, and I'm gonna go see this movie because you heard it's gonna become a movie, and I'm gonna go see it. But it left me wanting more at the end of every chapter because some of them ended in suspense, and they were very great, and I loved reading them. And it's not like there was a sex scene written on every page. It was like every other chapter. And then when we weren't in Tate's POV, we were in Niles, and we learned about his past a little bit. I like that part in the book. One of my favorites. I have when they ran those errands, and he went to go get the curtains because she's like suggesting curtains in his apartment, and that was cool because like it showed them bonding, doing something other than sex. And they weren't really friends, but I guess they were doing it as a way of, hanging out, but not in a dating way, not in a friendship kind of way. But I don't know, the running the errands thing was cool. What was another cute part was after this whole thing happened, they had sex on the kitchen table, and then he just walked off and slammed the door. When they went to the airport and they were watching the planes take off, I was so sad. They decided not to do it, and they agreed, and then she kept going back to him, and they ended up doing it again, and their terms kind of got more strict, and then she thought of her own rule, don't give false hope, and she ended up having false hope, and it ended up getting worse, the relationship between them. And it just made me sad that she wanted this guy, but for love, and she loved him, and he didn't love her back until at the end. But we find that Miles is slowly falling more in love with Tate, every minute they're together. He just doesn't say, because he's denying himself that he's ever going to fall in love again until the end when we see Rachel and she finds out she's married, she has a kid, she has a daughter. And I love the part where he goes in to see Claire and he's like, that's his sister. Cause that was such a heart-wrenching moment, and I just broke down. It was so sad, and it was still nice in the same time, and they shared a moment together. And then he left, and he decided that he really does have feelings for Tate. And then towards the end of the book, he ends up telling her that he loves her, and as she's in her own apartment, she's doing her own thing, and she's forgetting about him, but she still is because, of course. And then he takes her on this airplane ride with Cap there, and then as Cap leaves, and then he talks to Tate, he brings out 2 boxes, one with a key, and I'm like, oh crap, he's not gonna propose, is he? And then he pulls out a key, he has her to move in, he pulls out the box, and he proposes to her, and she says yes, and I loved that scene. When he proposed, I loved it. And the ending just tore me up. It was so good and so sad. And it was nice in the end. We were Miles' POV because he got some closure, and we got some closure. And we were feeling what he's feeling. There's another scene in the book where they got into the plane crash, and I actually thought that it was Corbin. And my first initial thought was it was Miles with the plane crash, but he was fine because he was across the hall. They called Corbin, and then my other initial thought was Corbin, but it wasn't. He's fine. He was in his airline. It was a moment where we were in just suspense, and we didn't know who it was, and it was just so upsetting. And then it finds out everybody's okay, and then everything goes back normal, but then everything spirals down again. What I talked about just before. My favorite part of the book was probably where they went to the restaurant, and they were like talking about sleeping, and when it was not sleeping, it was sex, and then Ian was there. Oh, Ian's my favorite character. I love him. He's so funny. I found him so energetic and happy, and he's somebody you could probably be really easily friends with, and he was friends with Miles from the beginning, from high school, so I think that's pretty cool. They met, both Miles and Ian met Corbin in flight school, and I like that. I'm going to reread this book again before the movie comes out because it was just so good. One of my favorite books. Favorite book, it's like in my top 10, so it's very, very good. I'm going to read more of her books. My other favorite part was probably when they kissed in the rain, and it was just like a moment between the two of them, and they didn't care that they were getting wet, and they were just kissing, and it was the most romantic moment. They went into her car, and they were soaking wet, and then they had sex in the car. It was so good, and it made me so happy, and I loved that scene so much. It was so sensual and passionate. Oh god, it was good. Oh, and then at the end they had a baby, and they named it Sam after Cap, and they had a daughter, and it kind of showed him that he could move on again and be a dad, and he finally had closure, and I loved it. I loved the end, and it was so sweet. That's my book talk. I hope you guys liked it. I will be filming more videos very soon, like at least maybe once a week I'll be filming, and I will be uploading. So you can expect more videos coming in the near future. If you're not following, my social media is, my Twitter is at LettyFan93, and my Instagram is at DivergentFan93. So subscribe, like, and I will see you guys later. Bye!